The biggest thing I hate about current Star Wars to this day will always be the fact that The Last Jedi is still canon and has ruined Luke Skywalker. No further elaboration is really needed, to be honest. I think everyone here already understands why I don't like this version of Luke Skywalker. It has been explained throughout YouTube and the internet at large for about nearly 10 years at this point, and the arguments have already been elaborated. At this point, if you still defend Luke Skywalker when it comes to consistency, writing, if he's character assassinated or not, or if he fits with the OT version or the character in general thematically, if you still think that it wasn't bad how they did it in The Last Jedi, I'm sorry to tell you, I'm usually going to assume that you're either a shill or you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. The utter straw man of these idiots go, Luke is supposed to be human, Luke is supposed to make mistakes, doesn't understand the underlying issue with how he's handled in the movie. We don't really care that he makes mistakes. We don't really care that he has fallen from grace. We don't really care that he's a human character. That's not our issue with how they handled in The Last Jedi. It's how he's a flawed character, how he thematically fits with the greater Star Wars universe with the implications The Last Jedi has given us, and just how disrespectful all around this version of the character is. If you want to do a broken Luke that failed to make a Jedi Order, you gotta do it in a way that's at least tasteful and thematically relevant to what Luke stood for in the original trilogy. The thematic point of Luke Skywalker in the grander Star Wars story is how he's supposed to reflect his father, but in a more positive light. Anakin and Luke in many ways parallel each other throughout their lives, but they have key differences. While both of them grew up in Tatooine, one was a slave and the other a humble farmer. While one's connection and compassion for others is based off control, lust, and fear of loss, the other is based off genuine love and compassion for the people that he cares about. While one's Jedi Master tragically died before he could truly teach him anything, another's Jedi Master, even in death, was able to teach him morality and the ideals of the Jedi throughout becoming a Force ghost, while still being a father figure to Luke. The overall point that I'm making is that Luke and Vader are supposed to be thematic opposites to each other while living very similar lives. Luke Skywalker embraces idealism and embraces the light side for all the positive qualities that it has, while being responsible and mature enough to understand the dogmatic black and white view that the Jedi can have. While Anakin may see the flaws in the Jedi, but it's based off his selfish nature of wanting control and to not be able to lose the people that he cares about. Both of these are because of how Luke always had a healthy upbringing with people that genuinely love him and give him proper support, while Anakin was for the most part isolated with people that always told him to close his emotions. Not only are these interesting thematic points to parallel each characters, it thematically explores the idea of the Jedi Code and the Force and what it truly means to be a Jedi and to be a hero. With all this being said, having Luke eventually succumb to the things that Anakin succumbs to ruins the point of his character and how he's supposed to parallel Anakin / Darth Vader. If Luke was so willing to give in to fear, insecurity, and was so possessive and controlling of not wanting things to change to the point he tries to kill his own nephew, Ben Solo, then you absolutely ruin what makes Luke special and what makes him stand out from Anakin Skywalker. You make him another Jedi, or worse, you make him a clone of Anakin, but less compelling and less interesting. And this is why I hate how The Last Jedi handles his character. Luke is supposed to be an idealized Jedi. He's supposed to be an idealized version of the Chosen One. He's supposed to be a hero. That doesn't mean he's flawless, and that doesn't mean he can't make mistakes, but it's supposed to mean, in the end of the day, he has a warm heart that cares for people, no matter how broken his gets. And that is the core, fundamental idea that The Last Jedi fails to understand about Luke Skywalker. With all this being said, I think you guys can understand why it blows my mind and kind of pisses me off that there's still people out there that defend this version of Luke. Thematically, it ruins his character, consistently it ruins his character, and narratively it ruins his character. So that's why today I'm going to do, for the first time in my channel ever, a debunking of someone defending Last Jedi's depiction of Luke Skywalker. This is a response to a YouTuber called Star Wars Centralized in defense of The Last Jedi's flashbacks.
It's a normal night at Luke Skywalker's Jedi Temple on Ossus. Ben Solo lies asleep in his hut, and his uncle Luke Skywalker enters. Looking into his nephew's mind, Luke saw that, quote, Snoke had already turned his heart. Luke saw that Ben had turned to the dark side, and thought he could stop it. He ignites his lightsaber over his sleeping nephew, and when Ben wakes up and sees this, he summons his own saber, ignites it too, and strikes at Luke. bringing down the entire Hutt, destroying Luke's temple, and effectively ending the new Jedi Order.
Yeah, totally love it how we have to start by square one again, because Disney can't think of new ideas. Awesome. No more Jedi Order, guys.
This is what happens in the final flashback in 2017's The Last Jedi.
Oh, really? I thought this is what happened in Chicago.
The third of 3 that show the same event as described in 3 different ways. And boy, is this plot point controversial. I'd say it's probably the most controversial thing that happens in the sequel trilogy.
And I would say the greatest failing of the entire Star Wars fan base is the fact that we all couldn't just come together and agree that Luke Skywalker was ruined in this scene, but instead we have to make arguments and lies and misconceptions of the original trilogy to justify a dog shit movie.
You fucking crackers are some of the worst fucking people on God's green earth. I swear to God, you guys are like a fucking disease. You're a fucking cancer on this goddamn planet.
Aside from the return of Palpatine in Episode 9.
I'm gonna be honest, I'd rather have Palpatine return than what they did to Luke Skywalker. At least you could, theoretically, come up with some interesting ideas, stories, concepts, or at least cool action scenes with Palpatine returning, even in the way that he does in the dogshit movie. But ruining Luke Skywalker, such an important and integral character to the Star Wars universe, and a character that has touched the hearts of many fans, I think that hurts a lot more than, oh no, Palpatine didn't die, and then he dies again. Like, it sucks, don't get me wrong, but I would rather Palpatine return than Luke Skywalker be ruined forever. At the very least, Palpatine isn't fucking character assassinated. Like, you gotta give it that much credit. Luke Skywalker was a great character in The Last Jedi.
Fuck you and fuck him.
And because it's so controversial, I'm just gonna ask up front, even if you disagree with what I'm gonna say or what I'm trying to do, please hear me out. I'd love to hear your opinion after you've watched the whole video. People hate what Luke did here, igniting his saber over his sleeping nephew. They claim that he would never do that. But I think what Luke did is completely understandable within the established story, and more importantly, within Luke's previous original trilogy and even expanded universe characterization.
Alright, I'm listening. I'm willing to hear you out. Let's see what you got.
But proving that requires a few different points. Firstly, getting it out of the way, the first 2 flashbacks, and especially the second one, are from totally unreliable narrators.
Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious. I think the problem is that the full story, which is the last flashback, still depicts Luke doing something he would never do.
I must clarify that these 2 flashbacks, while admittedly breaking the standard visual storytelling language of Star Wars, are not what actually happened. I can't tell you how many times I've seen folks using the image of Luke from the second flashback, this one, looking decrepit and evil, as a representation of how the film actually depicts Luke to be.
I don't know about you, but all the videos I've seen being extremely critical of Luke Skywalker usually acknowledge that the first 2 flashbacks are unreliable and just take what is said in the third one. I don't know what videos you're looking at, but for the most part, this is just not true. For example, I may not like the guy, but he kind of pioneered a lot of criticism against The Last Jedi. Mahler very clearly establishes this and understood that the big issue is that once the truth is revealed, he's still out of character. Same goes for a bunch of other people in the community that have always been critical of The Last Jedi. I feel like you're just poisoning the well by bringing up that, oh, how many times I've seen people use the second one when that's disingenuous. I don't know, motherfucker. That's just not true in my perspective, because most of the time when I see people rip this movie to shreds, which is a lot of people, usually do acknowledge this. The third flashback, where he goes, in a moment of weakness, I still fucking ignited my lightsaber, is still bad in on its own, and a lot of people will acknowledge that and elaborate on that point. Maybe you should actually start watching more actually critical videos on The Last Jedi and Luke's characterization to get a better perspective than this pathetic straw man of probably morons on like what, Twitter, that like go, oh, Luke's ruined, he's a big meaty head, look at him in the second flashback.
No, this is how Ben manipulatively described him, shown from the visual point of view of an unreliable narrator. Now that that's out of the way, the third flashback is what really happened on that fateful night, as I described in the beginning of the video. But still, many with the knowledge that the second flashback is unreliable claim that the true events are still Luke acting out of character.
So what was the point in bringing up that some people use the second flashback if you were aware that a lot of people still agree that what actually happens still depicts Luke out of character?
So, to address this, let's look at what Luke's characterization actually is in the original trilogy.
Alright, he proceeds to just explain what Luke's arc is in the 3 movies and what he does, so I'm gonna skip most of it. Watch the video if you think I'm leaving any context out. I'm just gonna go to the key points that is relevant to The Last Jedi.
But he also has a vision, while upside down, of Han and Leia in a city in the clouds.
I saw a city in the clouds. They were in pain.
It is the future, you see.
Future?
As Yoda explains that the Force can unlock visions of other things, including the future. Luke is deeply worried by this, and leaves Yoda before his training is complete, despite the old master's warning.
So despite the warnings of 2 Jedi Masters that if he goes to Bespin, he will be bested, haha, funny pun there, by Darth Vader in a lightsaber duel, he is willing to risk it all to save the people that he loves. This is a key point, because in The Last Jedi, he doesn't do nearly enough to try and save Ben before even considering turning on that lightsaber, versus here where he's willing to risk his life, at a younger age even, to save the people that he loves and to protect them.
Shaken by his relation to Vader and intent on rescuing Han, Luke has begun dipping into the dark side, using the Force for his own personal gain, climaxing on the Death Star 2. There, challenged by the Emperor and goaded on by Vader's threats against Leia, Luke strikes against his father.
And keep in mind here, yes, he was dipping into the dark side, but his motive to dip into the dark side in the entirety of this movie is to protect the people that he loves and cares about. And that is why, throughout this movie, he is doing everything he can to make sure Han, Leia, Chewie, R2-D2, C-3PO, and even his own father are safe and or redeemed. That is his motive throughout the entirety of this movie, and the only thing Palpatine and Vader could do to ever coax his darker side is to threaten the people that he loves. This is way more than a Force vision.
This is Luke Skywalker's entire journey across the original trilogy, but what does it tell us about him? Luke is kind, relentlessly so, but also begins his journey impatient and energetic. Humbled by challenges, he becomes more and more skilled, yet faces more demons, but never stops seeing the light in others and valuing them.
Yeah, right there. But never stops seeing the light in them and valuing them. So if he never stops seeing the light in people, including one of the most evil characters in the Star Wars universe, why would he not try to see the light in Ben Solo, or at least believe he can be brought back to the light?
The most evil man in the galaxy, Luke saw there was still good in him and chose love over hate, saving him. This is Luke Skywalker's character. And it leads to what I often see claimed about what he's revealed to have done in The Last Jedi, and how it interacts with his last prominent appearance in Return of the Jedi. And part of that is intentional on Rian Johnson's part. The way Luke is framed in this shot of 8 absolutely reflects that of this shot in 6, and it's not just the subject, but the meaning too. Both are Luke looking at his hand, standing over someone, horrified of what he can do and what he's just done to that person. But for most people, the similarities end there. In 6, Luke is standing over a genocidal man who has been this way for over 2 decades now, who just credibly threatened his sister. Whereas in 8, Luke is standing over his 23-year-old apprentice, yes, he's 23 despite being described as a boy, who hasn't even done anything wrong yet.
And that right there is why Luke is completely and utterly ruined, and why trying to compare it to how he used his anger and hatred to defeat Vader is completely invalid. You just perfectly described the issue, so I really wonder how the fucking hell you're gonna defend this character now. After literally just saying all that. That was perfect. Vader's a credible threat and had a credible threat against his fucking sister, while Ben Solo is just some guy sleeping because of possible Force dreams, which may or may not be true, which Luke should know, because in Empire, Yoda literally says the future is ever changing, by the way.
It's not a moment of combat, Luke isn't pressured by anyone else, and it's him looking into that person rather than that person telling him something.
Oh my god, I might as well sit back because you're doing my job for me, proving why Luke is such a piece of shit character in this movie. Thank you so much for adding even more arguments that even I didn't think about, like being in the midst of combat. That's a great one.
Good job.
And when you frame it like this, yeah, it doesn't seem like something that the same Luke from episode 6 would do. At all. But I don't agree with this, when looking at it from a different point of view.
The fuck we talking about? Garbage ass.
Luke has always made rash decisions, like what he does in episode 6 right before this shot.
This is a terrible argument. Just because Luke has made rash decisions in the past doesn't mean he would make a rash decision that would involve risking the life of a family member that he deeply cares for and loves. This is like saying, guys, Batman is paranoid, so he would be paranoid enough to put bombs in kindergarten schools just in case a viable threat is there, like Darkseid. That doesn't make any sense because Batman has moral integrity and moral beliefs that would stop him from doing that even under those character flaws. Character flaws are indicative of their perspective and beliefs and would act upon them with those perspective and beliefs. Yes, Luke is rash, but his rash decisions are made to save the people that he loves, fight for the people that he loves, or try and save the galaxy as a whole. For example, is it a rash decision that he succumbs to anger and fights Vader? Yes, but he does that because he loves his sister. That he didn't do that because, oh, I'm scared of losing everything and my Jedi Order and stuff, and then tries to murder someone that he cares about. He did that because one of the most evil men in the galaxy threatened someone that he cares about, so he made a rash decision. Another example would be him going to Bespin. It's a rash decision. I'm not thinking about the consequences or if I would even be able to beat Vader, but fuck it, the people that I love are in danger. His moral sensibilities are the things that account for his character flaws, like being a rash decision maker. That rash decision is based upon his love for his family. So why in the hell would he make a quote-unquote rash decision against the idea that Luke would love and believe in his family member? And no one at that time was currently being threatened. And lastly, another thing I want to say is it doesn't even make logical sense for Luke to make a quote-unquote rash decision in The Last Jedi's flashback anyways. There was no timetable, no one was in immediate danger, he wasn't in a fight, he saw a vision that may or may not be true. Why the fuck couldn't he, I don't know, sit back and think through it like a normal person? Because being a rash decision maker doesn't mean you're just gonna make rash decisions when you're given information, no matter the context.
But I think a more comparable situation to what happens in 8 is what he does on Dagobah in episode 5. Luke receives a vision of a city in the clouds. His friends are in danger, and upon learning that, he abandons his training and any of his self-control despite Yoda's warnings.
That is such a disingenuous framing of the scene. He saw a vision of the future where his loved ones are going to be captured, tortured, and or killed. So yes, he makes the decision to leave for Bespin to make sure that they are safe, but A, he thinks through it with Yoda and Obi-Wan, they discuss it and he hears them out, and B, he doesn't make a decision that would risk the life of another family member that he loves. He makes a decision that would reassure the safety of the people that he cares about the most. This is not comparable to making a decision that could possibly hurt and or kill someone that he should love, his family, Ben Solo.
Luke makes rash decisions like this when his friends are threatened. We know this of him, even when the vision is something abstract.
Once again, this premise is broken because he didn't make a rash decision. He thought through the decision and decided to go check Bespin out. This is very simple. In Luke's mind, there is two scenarios. He either goes and checks Bespin and his friends are safe and the vision was wrong, or if it's right, he will be able to save them. In his mind, there really is no choice.
And an abstract vision is not what he sees in episode 8's flashbacks. And Luke's rash decision to ignite his saber over Ben is 100% about the specific vision that he has when looking into Ben's future and mind.
Ever-changing is the future, is what Yoda said in The Empire Strikes Back. This is something he directly taught Luke in Dagobah, so Luke should understand the concept that the future is never set in stone. He may have saw Ben's future, but he saw what is simply a possibility. Luke's belief system, faith, and hope should be strong enough for him to believe that he can change this future into a more positive one where Ben stays to the light.
Now for the big question. What did he see? Here's what Luke says in the film. I saw darkness. I'd sensed it building in him. I'd seen it at moments during his training. But then I looked inside and it was beyond what I ever imagined. Snoke had already turned his heart. He would bring destruction and pain and death and the end of everything I love because of what he will become.
Yeah, just like what Darth Vader and Sidious threatened to do in the end of Return of the Jedi, but in the end of the day, he still chose to try and redeem Vader despite it all. And that was actually happening. That wasn't a vision of a possibility.
Oh my fucking god, man.
So starting off, yes, Luke had seen darkness building in Ben during his training.
Darth Vader killed children and blew up an entire planet.
To another point later in the video, so we'll skip over it for now, acknowledging that it informed Luke's decision to enter Ben's hut that night, which I don't think is something Luke would do without having talked to Ben before. So claiming Luke only looked at night and didn't talk to Ben isn't really a valid criticism.
Yes, it is still a valid criticism. Just because he's talked to Ben before doesn't mean he can't after this vision. What he did with Darth Vader isn't talk to him once or twice and then just give up on him and try to kill him. No, he talked to him and tried to convince him multiple times throughout the entire duel, even while he was dying by Darth Sidious. So yes, it's a problem that not only A, did he not try to talk to him after this event before making such a horrible decision, like killing a family member, but B, that he didn't just try to bring him back to the light or try to call his mother and father to bring him back to the light. He didn't try at all to counsel him or to just at least inform his fucking parents. He immediately instinctually turned on the lightsaber, considering killing a family member before doing any of those way better, more valid options Luke Skywalker would have done. Like, I can't believe I have to reiterate this. He considered killing a family member in their fucking sleep over a possibility.
Cause hot damn, you wanna know what's a scam? Your fucking education, nigga, that's what the scam is.
But my claim that he probably talked to him beforehand is also pretty invalid, so we don't really know on that point.
Oh, so that's wonderful. So your defense, personally, yes, was just an assumption. The film never even says it, so it's based off, at best, a good faith assumption. But not only that, we don't even know for sure if he talked to his fucking nephew before considering killing him in his fucking sleep. Wonderful. Yeah, this is totally in character with Luke Skywalker. Am I right, guys?
All we know about is this situation. And this is clearly a situation where Luke feels like he needs to peek behind the curtain. He says so himself. Quote, "But then I looked inside, and it was worse than he could imagine." Luke establishes here that Snoke's manipulation had turned Ben's heart. And then, most importantly, Luke says that Ben will, quote, "bring destruction and pain and death and the end of everything I love because of what he will become." If we're interpreting this as I believe the film intends us to, that seems like a vision of the future. To look even further, the film's novelization says, Luke's eyes remain shut, but he can see fire and ruin and the sightless eyes of the dead, and he can hear screams and the howl of lightsabers, and the roar of explosions, darkness expanding from this slim, dark-haired boy to shroud everything, and the cacophony of terror that will accompany it. Luke has a vision of Ben's future, the future. So extrapolating from that and what Luke is described as hearing and seeing, this is important, Luke sees the deaths of Han, Leia, all of his students, kids he's trained from a young age. And if we want to go further, I think this is logical as well. It's not a stretch to say that Luke saw the destruction of Hosnian Prime in his vision too, the crumbling of the New Republic, the deaths of billions, all because of his nephew.
Yes, and the destruction of Alderaan, the fall of the Jedi Order, the deconstruction of the Republic converted into the Galactic Empire, the deaths of thousands if not millions of rebels and innocent souls across the galaxy, the butchering of children was all done by his father, Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader, and in the last movie of the original trilogy, both of those characters threatened to kill everything he cares for and loves, the entirety of the rebellion, the safety and sanctuary of the entire galaxy, and it would lead to the death of Han and at least the torturing and conversion to the dark side of his sister Leia, which is arguably just as bad if not worse. And the difference is, unlike a vision which has always been just a possibility and not guaranteed, this was actually fucking happening to him in front of his fucking face. How do you people not understand that? In the moment he was experiencing that in the prior movie we saw him in, and he still, yes, with struggle, ultimately didn't kill Darth Vader, who's basically Space Hitler.
And then looking back to Empire Strikes Back and knowing Luke's characterization in the original trilogy and how he changed across it, I think Luke igniting his saber in an instantly regretted moment of pure instinct after seeing the deaths of Han, Leia, his students, the New Republic, and more is completely rational.
Yeah, until you understand two things about Luke's character. Number one, he overcame this struggle in Return of the Jedi while he was still dealing with the deaths of possibly the entirety of his family and almost succumbing to the dark side. He ultimately still made the decision not to kill Darth Vader, and that was something that was actually happening and not a vision, which leads into my second point, B, which is the fact that he understands that ever-changing the future is because Yoda taught him that in The Empire Strikes Back, which means he acknowledges this isn't guaranteed, this is a possibility he can prevent with more kind and loving means, like how he did with his father, tried to talk him out, tried to see the light in him, tried to appeal to family, yada yada yada, but he didn't do that. He immediately considered killing someone that he cares about because of something that may or may not happen.
He would do that, and I don't quite understand claiming that he wouldn't.
I think the reason you don't understand is because you do not want to understand. Because of your emotional connection to this movie and to this arc that Luke goes through, despite its consistency and how it fits his character, you have grown an emotional attachment to this story and to this version of Luke Skywalker that you refuse to acknowledge or understand what the other side is truly trying to say about why it's out of character and why it's badly written for Luke Skywalker. That is why you don't understand, because once you just put the pieces together, like I have been doing in this response, it's quite easy to understand why people think this is out of character and why he would never do this. There is A, other options, B, he grew from this in the OT, and C, Darth Vader is worse than Kylo Ren. That is all I need to say. It's really that simple, and there's no real way of weaseling out of it. No matter how much you try to conform and convert and twist the OT's version of Luke Skywalker, you will never convince people that actually understand this character and Star Wars as a whole that this is completely in character doing that. Please actually form better arguments than, oh, well, Luke did a rash decision here, even though it was to save a family member and not kill one. I don't care about the context. He did something rash. He did something rash. It's immature and pathetic and shows that you're nothing but a shill for this fucking version of the character so far, and you're not taking this factually.
A vision like that has come to him before, and it came true. 2 times if you want to count that.
Okay, 2 things. Number 1, the whole Force vision that he saw in Dagobah of him becoming Vader didn't come true. He didn't succumb to the dark side, and he didn't become as evil as his father. That's what that vision was supposed to say. So you're just kind of being disingenuous there. And secondly, Luke has learned the lesson that the future is ever changing and isn't guaranteed, because even if you want to ignore Yoda's line, play the clip right here.
Always in motion is the future.
He literally experiences it firsthand with the downfall of Darth Sidious. The Emperor Palpatine in episode 6 keeps going, "It is foretold. I have foreseen it. This is your destiny, Luke." Because he, with his arrogance, thinks he knows what is coming because he uses the Force to see the future like Luke did on Empire. But because of his arrogance, he doesn't understand the idea that the future is ever changing, which is why he never suspected Vader would pick him up and throw him down the shaft, which is his ultimate downfall. Something Luke was there to see. And keep in mind, all of this that he learned was in the original trilogy before he was a Jedi Master, let alone the Grand Master of the entirety of the Jedi Order. So he should be way more knowledgeable on how the Force works and how foreseeing the future works as well. He should also understand, ever since he knows about the prequel era in TLJ, that the reason Darth Vader even fucking happened is because Anakin Skywalker made rash decisions because he foretold the future.
To address the differences between Luke's actions in Episode 6 and Episode 8, and the criticism that it doesn't make sense because Luke is in a peaceful situation in Episode 8 while he ignites his blade, rather than in combat like in Episode 6, I think Luke's all-encompassing vision is sufficient, along with the fact that Luke saw light in Vader because it was there. Vader was very conflicted.
I've already debunked the vision point, so we're just going to move past that. To talk about what he said about Vader, yes, Luke did see the light in Vader, but to argue he didn't see the light in Ben Solo is just strange, and it's probably unlikely if he tried hard enough, because firstly, in the 2 movies that we get with Kylo, he is conflicted. That's how he lost in the fight against Rey in the first movie, and that's why he couldn't shoot his own mother in his starship in The Last Jedi, the movie that we're literally watching as we speak. So I don't buy that at all. Kylo is clearly just as, if not more, conflicted than Darth Vader, because Vader was okay with killing fucking kids, by the way. And secondly, I don't even think it matters. Even if he somehow didn't see any light in his nephew at all, he would still try to bring him back to the light. He would try and give him reasons to go back to the light. Or, I said this before, he would at the very least talk to his mother and father to see if they could help him. He wouldn't immediately consider killing a family member who is sleeping, even if it was for a fleeting moment. It doesn't fit his character at all, and and the fact that Luke has always had faith and hope in people, even when the odds are stacked against it.
Now, some may say that this is something Luke should have seen past, seeing the light even in those completely consumed by darkness, and I see what you mean. That's probably why it was an instantaneous decision that was immediately regretted.
I've already addressed this, but to reiterate one more time, Luke doing this under an instant, or, oh, he immediately regretted it, or, you know, fucking, it was pure instinct, or whatever, doesn't hold up, because what characters do instinctually is also what you can use to judge them morally. What they do in the moment is more meaningful to who they are as a person than what they do when they think through situations, because it tells you what their immediate reaction is to things. And what his immediate reaction was something highly fucking immoral and somewhat psychotic.
He didn't go nearly as far as he did in episode 6. This is what he does before he decides to stop in that movie.
Yeah, so much restraint. It's almost like actually threatening a loved family member, actually on the spot, and literally doing it while you're seeing outside a window everyone you love and care about fucking dying, and even then, only snapping once Vader does it to someone super close to him. Yeah, totally no restraint, guys. You little fucking moron, dude. It literally took everything ever that he cared about dying in front of him and threatening to basically torture his sister for him to finally snap, and he still didn't kill Darth Vader!
What the fuck are we talking about?
So to describe episode 6 Luke as having more restraint than episode 8 Luke just feels laughable to me, at least.
Goodbye, sir. I will not even dignify that argument with a response.
And in regards to Luke's fleeing to Ahch-To, after this, arguably a more out-of-character decision, I think it actually kinda works too. Luke knows his visions come true, and knows what he saw, and in a self-fulfilling prophecy in Luke's mind, him seeing that future and reacting is what causes that future. Luke blames himself. He knows what the future holds and just wants to die. I get it.
So you think it's in character for Luke to, number one, not own up to his mistakes, and number two, try to fix the things that he caused, especially if those things could lead to, in your words in this video, by the way, the death of his sister and his best friend Han Solo. You think it's in character that because he made a mistake and he blames himself, he wouldn't push himself to go out there and still try because he might be able to save the people that he loves? Wow, what a fucking awful defense.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Well, there's more to it, I think. Luke's story in episode 8 is far too similar to the later years of King Arthur for it to just be a coincidence to me. Arthur's later years are documented in several chivalric Arthurian tales, but the broad strokes, especially inspired by the Italian La Tavola Rotonda, are that Arthur is betrayed by his incestuous nephew and young knight Mordred, whom he fights at Camelon, where he's mortally wounded, dying on the magical island of Avalon. And with the mythological comparisons frequently drawn between the Skywalker saber and Excalibur, I think this is a fitting and tragic end for Luke.
Okay, so this is something I've been really excited to bring up, because this is one of the more newer arguments that these shills use to defend Luke's character or to explain why it's good, because it's thematically similar to King Arthur. This is a really simple argument to counter, and it's actually probably the easiest to counter, which makes it so laughable that they thought of this nearly 10 years later. Very simply, just because something has a thematic idea doesn't mean it was executed properly. If you want to make Luke's tale similar to King Arthur, that's fine, but it needs to be in character for Luke to make those decisions that leads to something similar to the events of King Arthur. No one would be against having Luke's tale be thematically similar to King Arthur if it was done lovingly and with care and consistency to Luke's personality throughout the entire story, but it wasn't, and that is our issue. So saying, oh, it's similar to this other form of literature, that means it's good. Like, no, that doesn't mean anything. All that it means is that you took inspiration from another story and you did it in a very shitty way. Guys, it's good because It's like King Arthur.
Did you read it?
All right, so the rest of the video is either him expressing his own personal feelings for how he likes the arc with Luke Skywalker, him talking about how the prequels are used in a different thematic light, and him giving light criticism on how it could have been expanded more. But overall, the video is over. All I want to say is, wow, this video is trash, but not unexpectedly trash. I think the lesson we have to learn is the Last Jedi fans that defend Luke Skywalker more times than not fundamentally do not understand Luke as a character and will be fully willing to twist the ideas and story arcs of Luke in the OT to fit their narrative because of an emotional connection to a movie that they did like. And I think that is overall pathetic and unhealthy for Star Wars discourse. To this day, nearly 10 years later, The Last Jedi is a horrible, horrible Star Wars movie, and I will stand by it is the worst Star Wars movie. I don't care if Rise of Skywalker is technically worse. Destroying a character I love so deeply like Luke Skywalker will always make me more mad and more affected than anything that The Rise of Skywalker did. The Rise of Skywalker is evil because The Last Jedi even happened. And that is all I have to say for today's video. Hope you guys have a good one. See you guys next time.